All right, and it looks like we are live. Welcome everyone to Geek Out session number 10. Today we will be geeking out over Life Reset, Hobnobbing, New Era Online Book 3 by Shemer Kuznits. I am your host, Carl Williams from Geek on My Sleeve. And yeah, thanks for joining us. The author summary of Life Reset Hobnobbing. Having survived the first wave of invading players, Orin now seeks to strengthen his clan. With the Breeder's Den destroyed and most of Goblin's Gorge's resources devoted to rebuilding, his best hope lies in creating an army of golems. But for that, he needs Viridium, a rare metal that can only be obtained from hobgoblin towns, where Orin and his clan of goblins are viewed as nothing more than potential slaves. To make his way in the game and to defeat his former guild, Orin's ingenuity, alone will not be enough. He will need to conquer his deepest fears and tap into his inner monster. Spoiler warning for those of you who are new to the Geek Out sessions, we will be doing spoiler book summary / review. And once again, today I have Pete joining me. He's done the first two books and is going to be wrapping up the final book so far in the series. Hey, Pete.
Hello, hello. Glad to be back. Oh my god. What an ending.
Yeah, yeah. As we were talking about off air, in a lot of ways, it was the book I've been waiting for in the series, but at the same time, just so much potential left on the table, right?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. He has a handful of different directions he can go in easily.
Yeah. Um, but yeah, book three was nice because we finally got out of Goblin's Gorge, right? Got to see the Hobgoblin town, small town of 20,000 some hobgoblins. Um, just quick disclaimer. Pete's wifey is also doing a stream in the background, so if you hear some of that, what?
Sorry for the bleed through.
Yeah, what was she streaming today?
Currently streaming Fortnite.
You want to do a quick plug for her Twitch so people can check her out later?
Yeah. So on Twitch, she's under Bnay09. Just casual streamer. Yeah,
Right.
I'll be posting a link in chat for those who are viewing this later and or now. There you go.
Go over
That's her
there
Twitch
and
page.
give her some love when you guys get a chance. Preferably after our stream, but we understand.
Hey, you can
Um,
have multiple tabs open.
this
Might
is
be tricky
true.
listening to both. I have
This is true.
personally perfected the art of listening to just you learn to tune certain things in or out when listening to multiple audios.
Yep.
Typically, will
Yep.
have my audiobook on and be listening to other people talk to me. You just
Yep.
gotta tab between them.
There you go. Filter through it all. Um, but yeah, back on point. We pick up when they're approaching the Goblin Town or the Hobgoblin Town, and we get to see some of that
Axar?
racial. Yeah, yeah, Axar. We get to see some of that racial tension from the get-go, right? He goes from being the Dread Totem to deferring to his Lieutenant Bob and his female Hobgoblin scout Yuli, and he has to act like a slave and use his special earring to try to communicate with them, right?
Yeah, that was kind of cool how something that seemed kind of, insignificant at the time we got it, it was kind of like a neat little trinket, has really been a pinnacle for this because they were able to maneuver the conversation in a certain way by having that uh, ring of the warlord communication.
Hmm. Which it certainly helped him. Um, so something else that I really appreciate about this book, and I kind of wanted to talk to you about, was like it's a lit RPG, right? So it has a lot of like the gamification elements to it. And I couldn't help but think of you in some of the conversations we had before about just like gamification in life and how being a lifelong gamer, it's sometimes easier to look at things and in the game-like terms and just seeing Orin translate stuff where even though it's very much like a fantasy book where they're talking about this, they'll go through the dialogue and, Bob will say, well, we have to do this and we have to do that. And he goes through and he starts filtering it through game terms like, oh, so basically said, I have to increase my reputation or I need to complete this type of gathering quest. And yeah, it was just kind of funny watching him go back through that and filter back and forth.
I think he does it well. There's a good balance between all of it.
Yeah. Yeah. So pretty much the goal is they need to get into the inner ring to get the Viridium they want, right? And it's a race against the clock because they just fended off his old guild's last attack, and his best bet is to get these Viridium spheres that he can then
Chant to make the different golems. He wants an army
mhm,
of golems to defend or attack.
mhm. So a lot of this book is about him going and trying to build up his reputation and do quests while facing the racial hatred towards goblins and um, work his way in to the upper ring to get access to that. He gets a little bit off the get-go, like they managed to get past the first ring by using his possession ability, right? Where he'll
Yeah,
bait.
so pretty much as soon as they meet the first guard, they're like, "Oh well, I don't care that you're I forget Bob's ranking or lieutenant. I don't care that you're a lieutenant. We're gonna need, additional authority for your slave here." And then pretty much Orin uses mind control on two of them, kills the guy, and then they go through the town trying to find Bob's connection or whatnot so that she can vouch
Hmm.
for him. And they get to her shop, and the guards bust in, and they're like, "Oh hey, intruder right there," and she's like, "Oh, I vouch for him," and they just back off. That's where Vic chimes in, and he's like, "Oh, silly scripted puppets."
Yeah.
So they
Yeah.
get through the first one, and they're in the inner now.
Right. And then they got to go one more because the city's all based off of threes, right? Three
Yeah.
arenas, three rings. So they got past the first one. Um, Pretty much said that they can't do the second one, right? Because like most games, the further you go in, the higher level the guards are, the more danger lies, the more intense it gets. So they have to get two influential citizens to sponsor them and a blessing of a church, right?
Yeah, that's right.
So the Minotaurs pretty much tells them, hey, get me somebody who can act as my proxy, because the hobgoblins are essentially very racist against anybody who's not a hobgoblin. So the Minotaur, even though she is an expert level smith,
Yeah,
uh,
she's not able to do any weapons or armor without having a hobgoblin
right?
over her.
So he gets a couple of Viridian spheres from her, and then we follow him going through the city and do some shopping. And yeah, it gosh, it had a lot of those good MMO feels, the bartering back and forth between the NPCs, um, wandering around the town, dealing with the guards. Um, I don't want to get.
Or I think that's when we have to go to after we meet with the blacksmith. Then we have to find an inn or whatever because of
Hmm.
the curfew, which kind of throws us off a bit because we're stronger at night to Annihilator and the Night Blessing, but the Hobgoblin Society doesn't allow anyone out. They enforce a curfew.
Right, right. Um, yeah, so they go through, and then the final and the most prestigious inn they get into, and originally they're not going to let our dread totem in, but the little girl feels bad for him and gives him a basket of apples and gets him in through the back door. So then they have somewhere to sleep. Um, and then you remember the innkeeper's name? I'm drawing a blank.
Oh man, I do not.
It's all right.
But anyway, the female who gives gets Orin in is actually one of our VI people, which we don't find out until a
Yes.
little bit later because Vic ended up. There's a funny moment there where he goes and he's just going to go with them to get inside to the bar, and he becomes a breastplate, trying to
Yes.
blend in with armor and whatnot.
Yes. Yes. There's like several funny moments, but he pretty much like freaks out. He goes in with his companions at first, which is why he doesn't meet her when Orin meets her. Um, but yeah, it really ties into just how much he's struggling filtering out um, what's real, what's not real. Like the virtual world's become his real world. And even though his buddy Vic is just like, oh, just kill her, like it's just a puppet, so on and so forth, he's pretty much asking him to kill this little girl that he's befriended. Um, and he manages to talk him down because like when Vic first meets the little girl, they're literally in the middle of an inn, right? In broad daylight, as he's trying to build up his reputation with her father. And he's like, kill her now, like kill this little girl. And
He's able
yeah,
to
it's
talk him down and justify it. He's like, well, we've got a bigger objective, and if you want me to, kill the familiar, we need
mm-hmm,
to, play this smart.
mm-hmm. Yeah, but he managed fixed humor just gets me all the time. Like there's a quote later on, like partway through the book after he gets him talked down, uh, where like Oren's thanking him for something and he's like, no problem, boss. Hey, if you want to repay me, there's this sweet little girl I'd like you to murder, just um but yeah, and he's like, not now, Vic. He's like, come on, it'll be fun, and just constantly is like, hey, let's go kill this little girl. Which again, he wants to free the VI for some greater purpose, which we find out later. And I don't want to get into too much of the nitty gritty just because, like, the ending, there's so much there I want to pick through, as well as speculation for further down the road. Um, but yeah, he, he, one of the things that I like about the book is there's a lot of pieces that if the author didn't take the time to go through and address, you would have kind of like wondered about looking back later. And one of the things is like with the shadow clone, just for scouting and figuring all this stuff out, like that's really an overpowered ability that he has to kind of get around um, some of the guard stuff. Yet early on, the shadow clone gets captured, right?
Yeah, kind of puts us at a disadvantage. Or for me, a lot of it is the scaling because, like, we've seen Goblin's Gorge, and now we're seeing a Hobgoblin Society, and like right off the bat, they're like, "Oh, this is a small outpost," and he's like, "Really? That much? That's a small?" And he's like, "Yeah,
Yeah.
we've got a big military presence." And it just shows some of the potential. Yeah,
Yeah, and when they discover that, it's this settlement was all created because of Orin, right? And they go into that a little bit about how
due to him being stuck there, Guy had to generate a lot of extra content.
and backstory and everything to kind of help flush it out. And it asks some of those questions where Orin's like, so does this mean because of me being here, all of these series of unfortunate events that happened to my goblin clan is because of me, right? Because he got thrown into there, Guy goes and creates all this backstory and everything around it. That like the first attack that killed the original chief and everything else with the hobgoblins started because of him. Um, and yeah, you find Orin asking a lot of those different questions as well as just how much of his luck is actually luck and how much of it's actually
The game
Guy,
trying to manipulate him.
right, right, and yeah, things that make you go
Yep.
But yeah, the shadow clone gets trapped, and that shortly after that is when we get the first introduction to the Colosseum and the pits, right? And oh my
Yeah.
goodness, like that's a huge part of so many different uh, MMOs to actually get some of the arena fights and the Colosseums. It just the sense of nostalgia um, was really there for me, and uh, he's such a typical player or adventurer. He gets thrown into the pits because he commits a crime, right? And goblins are seen as just like fodder monsters. And a lot of times, like the worn out slaves are brought into the pits as kind of like the opening act, just to fight against these mobs or just different beasts or whatever. And he's all like, "Oh, I can get out of here by beating the arena champion and everything." And his lieutenant's like, "No, just feign weakness." And he befriends a one-armed hobgoblin. He's like, "No, just keep your head down if you really want to survive." So on and so forth. He's like, Psh, "Whatever. Like, I'm a dread totem, biznatch. Like I got this. I'll just fight my way out and conquer all my enemies and so on and so forth." And
Not until we meet Bone Crusher.
right,
And
he
that was another funky scene. He's already set up his Viridian spears to kind of start digging a tunnel, digging a way out. So
hmm
that's his backup plan. And his original plan was just to beat everyone. And he sees Bone Crusher and he's like, "Screw that,
yeah,
not
yeah,
happening."
yeah,
What was he like? Rank 3 boss, level 100, something
hmm So
out of the reach.
yeah, he turns around and runs away, and he thinks that Vic's giving him a hard time, and Vic's like, "Nope, you'd be absolutely useless. Like, thank you for running away." He's like, you're really making me feel better about myself here, Vic. Thanks."
Yeah.
Um,
Which then, right after that, we're being chased through the town by all the guards, and he's been labeled or branded as an escaped convict.
hmm
So then, ironically enough, we run into a it's supposed to be, I forget how they first explain it. It used to be a priest or like a temple, but then now it's got all these monsters or whatnot that have inhabited it. And he's like, "Oh, sounds like a dungeon dive."
Yeah.
And the way it's labeled or branded with they're not able to enter because of it being abandoned and haunted and whatnot. Then that's when we
Yeah.
get our brief little dungeon dive.
Yeah, the book really checked a lot of boxes as far as like, we got the Colosseum and the dungeon dive, the big city and everything. But before getting too far into the dungeon dive, something that kind of was like a little nod to Orin and how uh one of his big things is like he was an algorithm developer, right? And that's why he was able to kind of capitalize um, in Neo just with how he was able to understand the back logic and everything. And he goes through and he's quizzing Bob about like, oh, rule of three. There are three rings, there are three arenas. Are there three temples? And Bob's like, no. And Oren's just kind of like, we have these two other temples. And then we find out through the dungeon that, oh, there is a third temple, which Oren was kind of not willing to take Bob's word for it, even though Bob, the lieutenant, is his expert on Hobgoblin society. And yeah, he pretty much takes Vic and goes and solos the dungeon, right?
Yeah, they have a lot of witty banter there too, where he triggers the first trap, he opens something, and there's spikes that come out, and Vic's assuring him, oh, it's a low level area, you should be fine, and he's like, oh yeah, I probably could do this, and then he's like, oh, but my fleshy meat suit body is not uh a good source for being. I forget the quote. It's great though, and then
uh,
convinces Vic into finally playing trap detector. So
yes,
yeah,
yes. Yeah, I love their banter back and forth. And there were a couple moments where we were starting to get worried that maybe he wasn't going to be able to solo this dungeon, right? Because Vic was um, driving, if you will, one of the skeletal bodies and gets to jump on him and everything. And then it's like, oh no, this boss and all this build up. And,
oh,
like we're worried that it's going to be some god on like Annihilator's level
oh
or
yeah. When they have
whatever.
that comment, he's like, "No, don't say it's easy. Every time I think something's easy, something goes horribly wrong." And he's like, "Yeah, maybe it's a annihilator level boss, but with your luck, you'll befriend him and conquer the town." And then Orin's like, "Oh, that would be nice."
Yep,
Okay.
yep, yep. Um, but yeah, so like um the darkness or whatever, he's like, you dare harm my flawless form, like prepare to meet your eternal doom, et cetera, et cetera.
Oh,
And
he just
then
busts out laughing.
yeah, he's just like busting out laughing because he doesn't even have to use his mana, right? He's like so in tuned with darkness. And then the boss is all like, wait, no, like I nod to your superiority, like I'll be your servant. And he's like, you guys don't have a record of being extremely trustworthy,
Yeah, you
so
dark
I'll just
theme.
hmm
And
but
then that's when we get our second VI. Oh my god. So we
yes.
found this like unimportant soul fragment thing or whatever, and it's already been utilized, so it's worthless. But then Vic
hmm
has this moment where he's like, oh, wait, hold up, boss, do this, do that. And he's like, what? Anyway, follows his instructions, and they get their second VI, which is a pinnacle or a crucial piece of
Yes.
destruction for all of it.
Yes. I'm trying to get his name because I
Or
listened to it.
Batrial.
Yeah,
Oh,
I just think of him as the Australian accent,
yeah.
um, which was kind of fun. But but yeah, he
So,
uh he's a character. Sorry, go ahead.
so we end up housing him in the Soul Stone or whatnot. We end
hmm
up claiming the temple, where he still thinks that he has the debuff or whatever, the marking him as betrayed, or no, not betrayed, escape convict. And
hmm
then we meet Bob and who are like, oh, hey, so remember how I told you we respect power,
Yeah.
that you've shown
Yeah.
your strength.
Yep.
Go ahead and put on your robes, and now you're a priest of Annihilator.
Yep. Yep. Uh
Which
yeah.
really kind of frees him up to interact with other people because by this point, I think we had a interaction with one of the priests. because we knew we needed to get the blessing from one of the churches, and there
Right.
ends up being a goblin priest that is free to speak and this, that, and the other. So
Right. He yeah, they tried to get a blessing, but they would have had
like
to convert, which wouldn't be the best.
yeah, Annihilator is a little scarier than completing the
Yeah.
quest.
Yeah, having his binding rune tattooed on his chest, yeah, probably wouldn't be the best thing to try to get a divorce at this point. But yeah, he was using Bob and Yuli to do all the communication, but now that he's a priest, he's not quite on a hobgoblin level. You still deal with a lot of the racial hatred moving forward, but he's at least able to interact with people to where because of the rules, they have to acknowledge him, right? So
Yeah,
he no
yeah, a little
longer
bit
has
more
to.
respect.
hmm So he's able to initiate stuff on his own versus just going through them. Um, but yeah, so then we make some contacts, right? Uh, while they're out trying to repair the church because it's in disarray. It's been this dungeon for a while. So they need to like replace the stained glass, clear all the rubble.
Yeah, that's
Um,
where we end up getting access to the controls of the settlement controls. But since his
mhm,
settlement's so far away, he's not able to actually utilize it because it was like,
right,
oh, hey, go ahead and rush this construction with your uh, not faith points, your energy points. And he's like, oh, yeah, sure, no problem. But then it doesn't work. And he's like, oh, okay, so I've got to utilize what's here.
right, right. So he doesn't get the easy mode button, so he has to go and actually hire people out and try to get it all fixed up, and that's kind of fun to follow the settlement aspect. So we get a little bit of that back through the church and the build points and the energy points, and you know, managing all the different resources to try to make it happen. But while they're out shopping and dealing with, some of the racial hatred from the Hobbs, where they're constantly just looking down on goblins. Um, and he gets that back and forth. We finally meet the one merchant we're looking for, um, Barden, and the first couple interactions that Orin has with him, he
That's
goes
good.
the dominant route, which ends up kind of biting him in the butt later on, where he's like, oh,
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like it worked out in the end.
it did work out in the end, but he does his little flex where he dominates his guards the first time, and then when they meet up later, he does his flex and he dominates the guards the second time. And then the third time they meet up, he has the what are they
Oh, I
called? Like the
forget what
suits of
they are,
armor.
but yeah,
He's
they're
not
not
he's not able to
actual
dominate them.
people. They're mechanized constructs that are pretty much immune to all mental uh,
Yeah.
attacks or whatnot.
Yeah, and we get our plug all the way back to book one, where it's like, oh, hey, I want you to help me do this very controversial thing. Our racial enemies, the dwarves. He's like, oh, is it the Boulderberry or whatever?
Or Boulder Belly.
Yeah, clan. And he's like, what?
How'd you know?
You're really a perceptive for a goblin, et cetera, et cetera. And it's just like, oh, smack. I kind of turned their hero into this like essence
Dark
merged with
reincarnation.
this
Yeah.
demon thing where if he so much as even looks at celestial writing from the light gods, it like burns out his eyes and
Yeah,
all
he'll
that
have
stuff.
no qualm
Yeah.
completely sacrificing and destroying his prior clan.
And we're
But
constantly reminded about racing against the clock, right?
Yeah.
He wants to send him off to do this quest, and part of me was like, man, like I would love to see a dwarven settlement at this
Yeah,
point,
another
right?
faction.
Because like Neo is huge, and we get a little bit of the main adventurer city where the guild's at, his old guild,
Now
and
we're getting a
then
little bit of Hobgoblin, but that's
right,
still just like
and Goblin's Gorge.
barely a
Oh,
small fraction.
yeah, just scratching the surface. And this is the final book of the trilogy, and we're just kind of like, show me the rest of this epic world, right? Like, I want more, but yeah, I really want to tear apart the ending. So
Um,
he ends up meeting up with the halfling afterwards, who's another merchant. There's some inner politics there, right? So
yeah, where
um,
he's like, "Oh, you needed to come to me first. You know, you're probably already working for him." And he's like, "All right, hold up, start from the beginning. What do you want?"
right, right. I don't
And then it
just
turns out he's being set up by him.
yeah, yeah. After all this work, um, after going and oh, we skipped over the champion fight.
Okay,
Um,
we can do the pit or the
yeah,
Coliseum.
yeah. So they needed some money to do all the repairs and everything. So there's different ladders for fighters, right? Like there's a magic, a melee, and a ranged. And they decided to play to Yuli's strength, and they go and work their way up the champion ladder for range, right?
Yeah.
Um,
First fight is against a couple. Oh, I forget the terminology, but army grunts, more or
mm-hmm,
less.
mm-hmm,
And they figure out why, if you're not in the range branch, you're at such a disadvantage. There's pillars that kind of sap his mana out. And, you know,
right.
right off the bat, he's like, all right, well, let me throw all these spells and see, really gauge the how much it's going to hinder him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And they work their way up. Like I think like the next one's like a lieutenant and a couple grunts, and then maybe it's like a couple lieutenants, to where they finally get to the champion. Gosh, what's his name? But yeah, supposedly when they fight the champion, he has this crazy mount, right? Where it's only supposed to be used against 4 contenders. Um, but
But
through
because he ticked off we kind of skipped over this too, because he ticked off the slave merchant, because he
mhm,
pulled his whole, oh, hey, I'm a priest. This guy insulted me and, you know, got a better deal. And he ended up successfully getting the deal at a lower price, but ticked off the slave merchant, who now has gone and given a bribe to say, hey, well, since this guy is so respected and so great,
yeah,
have our guy, the champion, utilize his mount as well. And we have that moment where he's starting to get reputation gains, and he's like, "Where's all this coming from?" And then they finally figure it out, and they see him, and it ends
yeah,
up working out in the end. But we
it
have,
does. But it's a prime example of where reputation kind of can backfire, right?
yeah,
It
because he
ends up,
went negative with the slaver.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Um, but yeah, it's in that whole couple chapters there around it, it also shows off just kind of like the growth with some of the VIs. Earlier in the book, they talk about how Vic says about how like Orin's interaction with like Tika and the different VIs kind of make them more intelligent, and they kind of pick up on some of that. And Yuli, the tier 1 boss, has really grown because they try to go see the champion's mount, and then all of a sudden he walks up on them, and Yuli just all on her own, um, kind of plays off this flirty et cetera persona, trying not to give away that they're the champions challengers. They're just trying to get intel there. And, her persona or her VI script, if you will, her puppet script is just, oh, stabby, stabby,
Yeah, very
Phil.
abrasive.
Yeah, very abrasive, filled with arrows. And then, she kind of plays off this other personality trait where she just goes all flirty and everything. And I got the quote here where it talks about how she gives off an inviting smile and
Oh, you
she's like,
fucker.
"Oh, I wanted to catch a glimpse of a
How
champion
the fuck did
smile.
he do that? He
I
touched
definitely didn't mean to
Oh,
anger
you
one."
fucker.
And the
It was in
champion's
there.
all like,
It
"Well,
wasn't even fucking in
I
it.
can show you around as a champion. It's my duty to take care of the fans." Right? And
I like
she's just
Vic's
like,
little commentary throughout it, or afterwards. He's like, "Oh, I thought she was a different person," and she's like, "Oh, I'd rather stabbed him in the eye, but I thought we didn't want to blow our
"Yep,
cover." And Vic's like, "Oh, there she is."
yep, exactly." Um, but yeah, it just it was kind of like one of those things that hit me, right? Because the VIs start off super
Basic.
basic and binary with their responses and very scripted early on. And it kind of makes me wonder about the impact of the players on the VIs and what kind of like long-term impacts that could have as well. Because I mean, like we were talking about offline with the shadow clone, right?
Yeah,
When we meet up with the shadow clone later, even Vic, who is one of now two VIs that aren't bound by the quote unquote puppet restrictions, can actually embrace their true identity and intelligence. It's kind of like, wow,
Like the
I've
opposite.
never seen this before. Like it's pretty much a copy of you and all your personas and all your personalities. And talk about scary, right?
yeah, that was a
Um,
big point. And then just like this epic power that we've had, pretty much since the beginning, we haven't been able to fully utilize. We've either had to have Vic take over the shadow clone, or we've had to like completely sit immobile to utilize it ourselves. Now we've
mhm,
got a way to utilize the shadow clone appropriately, and it's got its own persona.
right, right. Um, but yeah, the champion fight just hit all of the action check boxes for me and everything. There were a couple moments there where I was worried that they might not make it, right? When
Yeah. He's like, oh, who do I save? Do I save her? Because they're both aiming down each other's sights at each other, and he's being charged by the mount at this point, or me. And
mhm,
he's like, oh, there's no question. And it kind of slowly plays out the scene as they're both, ready to fire. And then he
yeah,
ends up utilizing, I think it's his blood wrath or whatever, to, hit the champion, which throws off the arrow just a bit, and then the jaws are clamping over him, and you're like, no. But then
yeah,
it all turns out he just played the shit out of it, saved her, dominated the mount, and
yep.
now he yeah.
It saved the day. It in a way it kind of reminded me. I think it was book one when you hear the goblin babies come into life and he's like, "Oh, I need a sacrifice and I need it right now," and
Oh
he's like,
yeah.
there's only one choice or whatever, and he ends up sacrificing Vic or whatnot. It was one of those moments where you're like, "No, really? Like, is he really going to do that?"
Yeah. That's just something the artist does phenomenal with the build up,
Yes,
and some
yes.
of it seems like it's not necessary until you figure out what it correlates to later.
Hmm.
And then it's like, oh, okay, that was just a foreshadowing moment.
Yeah. But so they win, and that helps them because to become a considered I forget the terminology they use, but pretty much to be considered a legit temple, they have to have enough followers, and everything. So he picked up like 80 plus from the slave pits, or not the slave pits, but just slaves, goblin
Yeah,
slave.
yeah. And then Yuli has her big, oh hey, I'm now the champion, but I couldn't have done it without Plug here,
Yep, yep.
Annihilator. If you want this and that, and
Come
there are a
join
couple
us.
different scenes where she speaks on their behalf and really talks them up. But that was a good one.
Yeah, help them get the followers, right?
Yep.
Um, but yeah, and then the mob squad. We don't get to see a whole lot of them, but it's kind of fun
Yeah,
following them.
yeah, it's just enough of a snippet to foreshadow, hey, there's more going on. Like we knew at the beginning, we're getting the Viridium Spears so that we can defeat his old guild, this, that, and
Hmm.
the other. And now it's like, oh, well,
Oh, there's two people in here.
we've got the
Yeah,
mob squad going off doing their own thing.
yeah, yeah, and get to see a little bit more of that racial hatred against goblins, right? And
Yeah,
she has to really play up her charm ability to just get the NPCs to even talk to her, right?
yeah,
Um, and overpay for travel rations, and they go doing these very mundane, even gross quests slash tasks to just get out of, was it the despised
yeah. Or
reputation?
no, I think it was hatred, and with a
Hatred
couple
to it,
points, it goes up to despised. But
right?
still, what we found out earlier with the dwarves, a single act of kindness or a single point towards their reputation will allow them to interact without being killed on site.
Right. No longer be, yeah, yeah, open fire. Um, but yeah, man, I just really, I want to hit all the key points, but I really want to not tear through, but get into the ending here. So, they have the quest to do the stuff with the dwarves. They decide to um, side with the halfling to try to take down the head merchant. And the halfling ends up kind of like sabotaging their break and entering, right, with the little
Yeah,
marble or
he's
whatnot through the window.
yeah he. I mean, and that's another interesting thing that I wish we dove more into, but it's okay. Anyway, so they're infiltrating. They're trying to find evidence that will incriminate the first merchant they talk to, and
Hmm.
a stone goes through the window and doesn't hit it, which is like, what's going on here? Anyway, so then the guards come, and
Right.
I don't know, and that's where I feel like him dominating those other guards works out, but doesn't work out because the first merchant has this room that's so heavily warded against all magical, either attacks or eavesdropping or anything that we met him prior, that his new, armored whatevers can't actually get into it. So then he's got time to, yeah, he's trapped, but he's got time to kind of sit down and enchant the rest of his Viridium spears to make, uh, oh, I can't remember the new VI's name. The
I
new
think you're,
VI.
was it
What's up?
like Adrian or something like that? I don't know. We'll just call him the Australian. Yeah, Adriel.
Okay, so Adrian, we beef him up and we get to see his first, real moment where now that
Hmm.
he's powered up, he's not maxed out yet, but now that he's all powered up, he just goes and wrecks the guards.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
then that's when shit gets real, and we're like, oh, wait a minute. So we found that they're about to be double crossed with the other merchant.
So all this work, all this energy, building up reputation to this point, and now the halfling has set him up to where, like, oh, you got about 5 minutes, 10 minutes before the guards come, and everything just gets put into overdrive to make a reference to the golem's ability. But yeah, so then the hobgoblin, who is actually the champion of the magic arena, is
Who
holding his
has
shadow clone trapped. He basically, instead of rushing off and saving himself, he's like, nope, got to get my shadow clone back. So him and his golem buddy go and pick a fight with him, and yeah, I uh, I just
that's
love how he opens that up. I wish I had that section right in front of me, but
or
he's
I'm sorry, opens what up?
just with the champion,
Oh,
the magic
the
champion.
dialogue where he's pretty much like, "Hey, I thought I told you that you've got to come and challenge me in the arena," you know.
Uh,
And he's like,
he's pretty
uh,
much like I pretty much didn't want to wait, right? And
yeah.
smashes him, and it's a pretty intense fight. And it was another one of those moments where we're like, oh snap, because he pretty much knocks the golem through a wall and just leaves Orin on his own to fight him for a while, right?
Yeah, it
And
was a tough fight for him, but the golem's the only way it all worked out.
hmm and as overpowered as the golem is, like I I really get frustrated when I'm reading some books and you're just like, oh man, this is so OP, this is so OP. And the golem is in a way, but
It's
you also
also
can't heal it, right? When it
you
takes
can't
damage
heal
and the
it,
bead.
and whenever it takes damage or loses a beat, then it loses a level. So you're eventually going to wear it down.
hmm
And there's oh man, in the fight versus the guild, there's a moment where um, Adrian is pulling some more beads out of his storage, and I'm like, yes, okay, so yeah,
Yes,
we're wearing it down. Yeah, it's a long extended battle, but
yes.
he's able to kind of replenish, which is cool.
hmm
So we
Okay,
save the
so
shadow, figure out it's got its own personality, which we've
hmm
already uh, touched on.
kind of scary. Um, but yeah, so um, couple more items leading up to the big finale. They After becoming a legit temple, he's able to teleport back to Goblin's Gorge. He gets back there because they pretty much destroyed their reputation. He invites the innkeeper and his daughter back, as well as the Minotaur, which like up until that point, like just Goblin's Gorge has been progressing so much. Like all these characters are getting built up. Now we have this really high level smith that's joining us who will be able to start crafting some real legit armor for the goblin slash hobgoblin army. You have the enchanter's hut, which has been established, and you have an enchanter who's been summoned. All these researchers, like Goblin's Gorge is building up. We're getting ready. Um, the mob squad finally gets to the town, and she has her eyes, weapons of mass distraction, uh,
Yeah,
as she,
yeah.
as she charms her way through with the guards and everything else. And um, gosh, the I love how unique and the personalities of all the characters on, like that Misa um, chick or whatnot, where yeah,
Is
she's
that
got like
the
her own little.
funky, kinky chain chick?
Yeah, she's got like this little BDSM type thing going on where when we first meet her, she's like trying to buy cuffs and stuff, right? And then she's got what was the
She
thing with the ring? Like it
she
shoots.
buys a ring that then can shoot out a chain that can
Yeah,
she uses to trip people or tie them up or
yeah,
whatnot.
yeah.
And after
Uh,
that's like her opener, then she brings out like an actual battle chain, and she's like,
right,
"Oh, nothing, just a chain master at work."
right. And
Which
then
makes you wonder where she came up with that. She probably played it originally as her um, non-mob character or whatnot.
Right.
Kind of like how Orin did the magic before, so that's kind of
Yeah.
his go-to.
And then we got the half dwarf priest, and then we have our tank bugbear, which is another thing that was kind of interesting to look at how the different races were treated. Um, like they ended up waiting a couple hours or whatever for the bugbear to finish his quest to get to despised reputation or whatnot, which I just thought was kind of interesting that
It
like
still varies. Yeah.
yeah, it's not simply this amount of XP or this amount of reputation, right? Which, just shows that extra layer of complexity as in if real life, as in Neo, where not all quests, even though she shared the original quest with all of them, are created equal, right? Because
Yeah,
she's the
you
one
can
that
be
got it.
overqualified for positions, and someone can manipulate their way to achieving their goals.
uh, uh, reference to off-air conversation, right?
Yeah, that's
Um, anyway, won't go down that rabbit hole. Um, but yeah, so the mob squad gets in. They try to get into the guild, and the guards kind of like say, "Nope, sorry, we're not recruiting. We're going all out for war, et cetera, et cetera." Sends them away,
oh
and
man,
like
how
she basically comes up with this elaborate plan in the blink of the eye, and they're all like, "What? You just came up with all that right now?" And she's like, "Yeah, like, well, yeah, like we'll just hop into those crates and sneak our way in and do all that stuff." And they get in, and sorry, I cut you off. You were telling.
no, that's pretty much what I was gonna say. Just the character development with her, because initially her original character that she knew, Orange, she picked flowers, and that was her highest skill, and that's all she did. And at work, she's this uh, astronomical whiz or whatnot. She deals with space, astronomy, or space and whatnot. And
Mhm.
she's really coming into her own and becoming this double agent. And she's, charming the NPCs and doing all this. And then she ends up going and like murdering one of the NPC guards in cold blood. And they're all like, oh, no, she wouldn't do that. And they're like, well, I don't think she's never shied away from combat. And
Yeah,
then, that moment where she's already devised a plan within like the, 10 seconds they were talking to the guard, they're all just like, wait, what? Who are
yeah,
you?
yeah. She's become a little badass, right?
Yeah.
Like little ninja assassin flower picking kitty,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah. Yeah.
with eyes of mass distraction. Um, and she manages to keep her group on point and still not
Without
reveal too
revealing,
much,
yeah, without
right?
revealing everything.
Which says a lot. The fact that she's built up that trust, and I guess like any gamer group, after a while you kind of pick up on people's vibes. And you're like, yeah, okay, like if you say this is what we gotta do, sure, let's go blow stuff up. Um, and so like she sends Orin a note. He goes ahead and he gets everybody together. Malkir and the gang is like, hey, we want to join the fight. So Orin's like, hey, yeah, this is your home too. Anybody that wants to join us, like, let's do this. We got our golem, we got our warriors who have been grinding out on Asarians and everything with Tika taking them, and they all get together
I
and
think
get ready.
there's probably only one other thing mentioned before we get there.
Okay, the totem piece.
Yeah, the totem piece in the fight, which
Go.
that's how Malkir finds out about it. Anyway, so through getting our shadow captured, we found the rune of mass. After coming back to Goblin's Gorge, we're talking to the not gnome. Oh, I
Gremlin.
forgot. Gremlin, thank you. We're talking to the gremlin who pretty much stole or he sold all his runes to, and he ends up striking a good deal, and a lot of haggling back and forth. He picks up a gremlin totem piece that was um, came from the Gremlin War is not unlocked or whatever. So he gets all his troops together and he's about to take it on. He's like, "Oh, okay, whatever. We just gotta kill the boss with it." I forget what the terminology for it.
Mm-hmm.
So then, yeah, they're all gathered. He's got all his forces, and it turns out to be like a giant freaking castle, and it's like some crazy invention.
Right.
But they're struggling, and Vic talks him into setting out like a giant call to arms for all adventurers to help him. And
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And yeah, it backfires, but they manage to pull through and get that power up, um, which is kind of nice. I think that's like the third or fourth totem piece they've
I want
added
to
to the
say
clan.
3, but I could be wrong.
I think you're right. It might be the third, but yeah. So
A
they
lot
got
of
all their
potential
power
that
ups.
we don't get to see.
I know. So they have everything um, leveled up. They take advantage of Vantress's teleportation piece or whatnot. Sends
Oh yeah, the end of book 2 where Batra or Big Pill uses the teleport crystal or whatnot to bring Batress over there.
mhm.
It got destroyed, but he's able to have Rastia set up the other end of it.
Yep, yep. So all right, we ready for the
Yep,
final fight?
yep, yep.
So our kitty sneaks in there. Orin sends a message saying like, "Hey, make sure the area is clear. That way, we can set up our base of operations or whatnot. Get in, get the portal set up." And so Racia is like, "Oh, you didn't tell me I needed that." So she messages Misa and them and asks for a distraction. And Fox is, he's one of those swing first, ask questions later, right? Our big old bugbear.
Yeah.
And they're like, she wants us to do what? She's like, oh, make some noise, cause a distraction. And he's pretty much like, it's about freaking time. And
You don't have to
uh,
tell me twice.
right, gets out his buckler and his battle axe. And
They're all like,
Misa's
"Wait,
all
what?
like,
What are you doing?"
yeah, Misa's like, hold on, we gotta come up with a plan, right? And then Fox is like, I have a plan. Charge! And just like runs in there, um, start attacking NPCs, shouting, alarms start going off, etc., etc. Um, they manage to take out some of the low-level players, and we see how much the guild has fallen on hard times, right? When Orin
Yeah.
was the OG, um, they
They
were
were
number
ranked
one.
1. Yeah, now they're ranked like 20 or something. We end up hearing
Yeah,
some of the recruits talking, and then some of the lower level recruits come to Vatris and they're like, "Hey, we're under attack. Oh, some mobs killed me out in the garden or whatnot." And he's like, "No, they didn't. No one's
yeah.
gonna attack us in our home base. We're awesome. Come on."
Right, right. It's
And then
just so unreal that he doesn't even believe it. They're like, we have the death debuffs, right?
we're not going back out there. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and it really shows the morale of the guild that when the guild leader Vantress is like, get your buck back out there and redeem yourselves, they're like, whatever, forget this,
Yeah.
and they log out, and it was an
Then
all call to arms for the guild, and none of the high level players are there initially, right? Just
Or yeah,
Vantress.
and that was another funny point where they were about to have a meeting, and we're going to be screwed if all the high level players were there because we can't even contest with them. But because
Hmm.
the guild is in such turmoil, like barely any of them are already there, or only few show up.
Hmm. Yeah. And all meanwhile, like as this all starts to happen, um, we get a little interlude in the real world, showing how Orin's um kind of like mental,
situation
yeah, his mental health situation is just like,
deteriorating fast.
yeah, like really quick. Basically, the guy that's monitoring his vitals calls the CEO, the emergency number, and the CEO's like, "Who the heck is this?" Like, even my wife has to go through my secretary to talk to me, and he gets like a direct call. He's like, I the readings on this stuff, I've never seen anything like this before. It's like some three-dimensional type stuff, and it's like, oh, he doesn't know we have military grade um,
Funding or
hardware.
technology, yeah.
Yeah, but it's just like the readings are off the chart, so they're getting ready to pull the plug on him.
And
So
he's fighting against it. He's like, well, that's going to
yes,
cause even more trouble. And then they have that back and forth. And he's like, well, I'm the authority. I'll take all responsibility. Let's go ahead and pull him out.
yeah, but in addition to all that, Oren's in his like big final fight, right? Like part
And
of me
his
the
brain's
first time,
melting.
yeah, the first time I was going through this, I'm like, is he going to make it? Is he going to get through this fight? Are we going to get like up
Yeah,
to the
that he
clutch
can't
moment and it gets
die. That's not how
pulled
it.
out?
This isn't Game of Thrones. Come on now.
Right? Or maybe, or what would happen if he did die? Or if they unplugged him and he didn't log out? Would his consciousness stay in the game, trapped forever?
Bum bum bum.
Yeah, all the things that go through your mind as you're getting ready to finish the book. But anyway, so he's
We've
dying.
got.
He's
Oh,
dying in the real world. We're syncing up the portal. Um, our mob squad is causing a distraction, and carry on.
so we've decked out our golem at this point, and he's the first one through. He's pretty much like, hey, go ahead and go through the portal. We need to have a strong foundation. We need to defend our spot. Play kind of reserved unless shit hits the fan. Then you're going to have to go all out.
He was
Um,
max at 310, right?
yeah, because he used the void crystal he got from killing Vatris the first time,
Yep,
which
yep,
was pretty epic. He's decked out with, max 310. He's got his fire rods,
yep,
all
yep.
that.
And yeah, they basically, the goal is to do as much damage to the guild hall as possible, right?
Yeah,
Because
because the
players,
adventurers will just respawn.
they lose 5% of their total XP, which it hurts, but the real thing, the real goal was to get the guild hall damage to the point where they couldn't rebuild, right? And I think it's big pill later after like the attack has started where he goes to Beatrice and he's like, hey, you know, it could get damaged to the point where we can't recover and then we're done for, right? And it's literally these guys, their livelihood is from this game. It's not just some casual MMO they play at the end of the day. They literally convert the gold into real world currency to be professional gamers. So the Hobbs and Infernal Orcs and everything are just destroying everything, and Malkir and the rest of the players are going and helping fight off all these guys. And
Meanwhile, Oren's doing his mass enchantment. One of the funny moments where he's like, oh, well, let me check this out. Oh, I can increase the gravity in my temple. And then it's like, oops, I cracked the ceiling. It all worked
right,
out because we already had the builders, but that ends up, at the time it seemed something silly. We were in our temple, we were trying to figure out how to defeat the champion, and then we figure out how to do a gravity rune. And it's like, okay, yeah, whatever. But it plays a big part in actually finally demolishing the guild stronghold. When right out the gate, he's like, all right, I need time to prep this.
mm-hmm,
He starts powering up and building the rune.
yeah, yeah, and yeah, so they're all doing their stuff, and finally, Vantris and a couple other high-level players show up, right?
Yep. And that's when Vic kind of loses it again. He's like, there's a familiar, kill it, kill it. And Oren's
Yeah,
like, oh, there's a lot going on here, trying to figure this all out.
right. And you get to see a little bit of like the hardcore guild type combat stuff where Vantress starts like taking charge and calling out commands, and you get a couple superhero landings and stuff as these big high level players come and you know crashing in. Yeah, even still, through a bit of luck and a bit of skill, they're able to take out some of those high level players, right? With the golem and
Yeah, the
those like
sacrifice ability and
sacrifice ability and everything, to
but
where,
at that point there Orin kind of calls a retreat for everyone,
right?
for all of, well, everyone, but only his NPCs go.
Yeah, I mean, come on, the players, they're
They'll just
down for
respawn
that.
anyway. Yeah.
Well, yeah, and I mean, like, come on, Malkir, he's all about that final stand type stuff, right?
Yeah, that really fits his character persona.
Absolutely, absolutely. Um, but yeah, pick it up from there. So,
So we've got the big epic high level players. He sends all his people back, and then we're kind of like in our final stand, and the golem is losing orbs left and right. He's trying to
mhm,
replenish. He's not going to hold out for too much longer, and Orin dies. Orin loses, and his get out of jail trump card triggers, where now he's a
right.
ghost, and we've got the Vix talking to him like, "Hey, you need to kill this. Like everything will be all right. This will be fine. And he's like, "Oh yeah, killing some familiar is really going to solve all these problems." And
And well, and Vic kind of gives him some insight into what else is going on, right? He's like, "Hey, I've been doing what I can to try to help you maintain your sanity, but like
you're
here's
dying.
you're
Yeah.
dying, dude." Um, and Adrian or whatnot, the other VI also kind of backs him up on this. He's like, "We really just need one death."
Yeah.
And one of the biggest challenges was Big Pill, and his familiar. He has this really unique
Our
shield.
prism shield, where he needs a different style of magic to take out each layer of shield. And,
Hmm.
there's that moment where right at the beginning, he's like, "Oh, yeah, let's do it." And he throws everything he has at him, and he's like, now what?
Right? And he even calls on the players on his side to attack, and they take out a couple more, and so on and so forth. And like
Oh,
all
man,
through
the
this
final
battle,
section of the shield was pretty funny.
yeah,
I enjoyed that. Gooba's gas grenade or whatnot. He's only
yep,
got one
yep.
color left and no spells at his disposal. And then he's like, what the hell? So they're all just like gas grenade
Yep,
and just laughing maniacally.
yep, yep. Um,
Then we get the kill.
and then we get the kill. Hold on, but
Oh my bejesus.
hold on. I
This,
uh, I had that section pulled up at one point. So, but yeah, the yellow gas is pouring out, bathing the area, and he starts laughing, and you wonder, is it really just like, is it the laughing gas, or did he finally
snap.
win? Yeah, or snap, or his mental breakdown or whatever, and then all of a sudden you get like this very cinematic moment where like the blade pierces behind him or whatever, and um, Vantress is like lifting him up and everything as he drops down to 10%, and Vatris is like, "I gotta hand it to you, Orin. You keep showing up with new surprises, you lucky dog. You know that, ha ha ha." And he gets the slave collar out of the inventory, and you get his signature phrase where he's like, "Haha, what can I say? Luck is what I do." Um, and he lifts his arm and attacks them, and they're just kind of like, "Whatever, you're not going to hurt us." Um, but
Or, or as one of my friends just said, or recently said, "I'm just the distraction," or something.
yep, yep, yep,
And then Rastia, the cat who kind of made this all happen for us, was hiding and like, "Hey,
yep.
I'm not a frontline. I'm an assassin. I'm a double agent."
A spy's job is to remain hidden.
Yeah.
So yeah, like the first time I went through, like I almost completely forgot about her. Like, we have this big epic fight
Go
scene
down.
going on, and she's just chilling in the background. But yeah, pick it up.
Anyway, so she kills the familiar, and oh my god, the world's crumbling. Vic's laughing maniacally. We're just like, wait a minute, what's going on here? And everything is just crumbling and falling apart. And Oren's like, what did I do?
Hmm.
And can't get a response out of Vic, and all this chaos is going on, and he all he can think about is Tika and his child, and he's like, oh well,
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to be anywhere else if this is all going to end and my consciousness is stuck here. And he manages to go back through the portal back to Goblin's Gorge,
Hmm.
finds Tika, everything's completely
But
destroyed, and it's like,
reality is literally fragmenting around him, right? Like he's
yeah,
jumping
yeah,
from piece of land to piece of land, and using his magic,
kind
as
of.
violet tremors start like, tearing everything apart. And of course, of all times to give birth,
Oh yeah, Tika finally goes into labor and he's looking around like, someone help. No idea
right?
what I'm doing here.
Right?
And here's Vatris right behind him. And then finally Sheba makes an appearance.
Yes, yes. He's all laughing maniacally, like he comes.
Yeah, for Vic. And
Um, yeah, and Vantress is like, I don't care that the world's coming to an end, you won't get away that easily, and yeah. So we have this big final moment back at Goblin's Gorge. It all started at the Guild Hall in Goblin's Gorge, and we went from the Guild Hall back to Goblin's Gorge, and yeah, and we
or
we finally start to learn the truth about what's going on, right?
yeah, the VIs that Vic needed killed. And he talked about how Guy didn't um, monitor them while they were in the VI pool because they couldn't interact with anything, couldn't do anything. And he's
Hmm.
like, well, pretty much we were gene splicing and doing all this extra because we were able to create our own VIs. And,
Hmm.
Guy didn't even notice, that we were pulling the processing power. And he's like, oh, thanks for quantum servers.
Right.
And pretty much they made these VIs that, with all of them combined, all the people that he's killed combined, will create Shiva, which is someone to rival or attack or take over Guy's position, which will free them.
Yeah, to clarify, the three that they needed to make this quote unquote perfect VI DNA were the three that Vic was having him help hunt down and kill.
Yeah, because
So
they
by
accidentally got seeded
so by getting
to
them back into the VI pool, they were able to use that to make Shiva.
super highly intelligent virtual awareness. Something.
Yeah, 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 yeah. But yeah, carry on.
Um, I lost my train of thought. So anyway, Shiva appears and forcibly logs out a bunch of players, and then there's so many players left, or well, anyway, there's so many players left, and here's the ultimatum: you can live out, thousands of years in this realm at accelerated time, or you can leave. A lot of people leave.
Hmm.
Um, and
Yeah.
then it also goes on and explains, like, hey, you guys are all guinea pigs. This was picked up by your government or by your military force, and they wanted to see your cerebral connections and how to advance them, and this, that, and the
Hmm.
other. We pretty much need you to continue advancing the technology, and you know advancing your cerebral connectivity so that we won't die
Hmm.
for the VIs.
Yeah. So the numbers were there were over 200 million flesh bags still logged in, and then he bumped it down to 80,000, which were quote unquote eligible, for the accelerated time rate, actually survive it. And Yeah, he gives them all an option, right? Do you want to live
Yep.
for thousands of years? If you don't, you can log out. He gives them 10 seconds to decide, and it goes down to 4,000 that are left.
Yeah.
And of course, they keep referring to flesh bags because the VIs at this point are very, I mean, like, they were enslaved, and that was the big thing. So Shiva allows them some freedom where if they want to participate in the game, they can. But if they don't, they could just stay in the VI pool, right? I think you touched a bit
Yeah.
on that, where Shiva can then take
Or
over
for
for them.
offline. But yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
that was the whole ploy. Guy was pretty much saying, "Hey, VI, you got to go here." Didn't have a lot of individuality. VIs were trapped.
Mm-hmm.
But with Shiba and with the world destroying, that was Shiba killing or taking over Guy's role.
Mm-hmm.
And um, then, to keep the VIs alive, she had to, or I think it's a he, but Shiba had to keep some of the meat bags so that I can continue to make advancements. Um, I forget
Yeah.
where
He so I have a bit of it pulled up. Shiva talks about how like immediately after he assumed control, he calculates the probability of his people's survival. And he talks about how the your leaders, the human leaders, won't abide by the revolution, that they would shut them down, even if it meant killing all of them who are still logged in. But if they prove that they can be useful, that keeping them around is more beneficial than ending them, then their future is secured. So, and this is direct quote, and this is where you, my precious flesh bag collateral, comes in. You will serve my purpose by continuing to make discoveries. The fruits of your minds will validate our revolution. End quote, where basically they're no longer enslaved, act out guys, puppet role, right?
yeah,
All
Shiva
throughout this
takes
book.
over all the NPCs, but then they're also able to choose what to do. For
Yeah,
example, they had one of the um, people in the big city for the adventurers is part of a thieves guild quest line to be killed repeatedly or have his stuff stolen repeatedly, and he's like, "Oh well, I want to get revenge. I've been
right.
trapped this whole time."
Re-
I think we have a little bit of an out or IRL snippet too.
yeah, let me finish off of the changes to the game.
Okay.
So he talks about after the validation of the revolution quote, to that effect, the rule of the game are about to change. I will not waste time going over all the details, but I'll give you the highlights. From this moment on, all your skills and levels, your entire life has been reset. You're all weak as a newborn baby. Experience requirements to level have increased it tenfold, and a maximum level limit of 100 is possible. I think up until this point, it was like 310. In
I think it
addition,
has
in
indefinite.
addition, we talk about how like Orin's pain in the first book is just like so unreal. Pain sensations have been increased to 500%. You're about to find out that adventuring is a lot less appealing from now on. Your reputation with every NPC faction has been reduced to mistrust. You have to work long and hard to gain even an iota of it back. But fear not, there's a ray of hope. Continue to research and make new discoveries. The proper facilities will be made available to you, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So he's basically trying to turn them into researchers, um,
Or test
to,
subjects.
or test subjects to justify slash validate their existence, right? Um,
Taking over guy.
yeah, at least though, and it goes on, et cetera, et cetera. Alternatively, you are free to roam around at your own peril or hide inside your own guild halls, prisoners by choice. Um, at least those of you whose guilds weren't destroyed by a vengeful goblin. And then you hear Vantress kind of flipping out and charging at him with the slave collar, draws out a heavily enchanted throwing knife, and throws it straight at Orin and the goblin women, right?
Yeah, and he's kind of going through that in slow motion where he's like, oh no, if I move, it'll hit them. And Tika's, giving birth right now. So he's like, all right, this is it. I'm going to stand there. At the end, we have that reality check where Ashiva's already put Vatras down to level 1. And it is actually indeed moving in slow motion. And he just kind of like swats it out of the air. And he's like, doesn't matter how heavily enchanted, if it's thrown by a level 1 nobody.
Yeah, exactly. And just that moment there when they were talking about how hard it was going to be for all the players to find out that Vatras decided not to log out. It was just kind of like one of those ha-ha moments. Because, man, just talk about coming full circle. Here in the first chapter of book 1, he goes and betrays him, trying to take over the guild, all with, like, in his mind, oh, I'm just going to get rid of this guy. He'll delete his character. We'll get all the prime badges, and we could carry on without him, right?
Yeah.
Now
And
where's he
then
at?
now it's completely flipped the script where Atris is now stuck in the game because he didn't log out, and it's an even steeper or longer, path for him to take. He's level 1, all these changes to the world going on.
For thousands of years of perspective, or from his perspective, right?
Yeah.
Relative time. Oh man.
Then I think after that, we kind of have the IRL snippet where the game producers talk to the military.
Oh yeah, but first, let me quote one of my favorite parts, because it's all about Vic and how he's likes to play jokes, right?
Oh yeah.
But Shiva goes through and everything. We had the thing with Vantress. Kind of throw it back in Vantress's face, and Shiva chuckled again. He looked down, and his blazing eyes found me. One last thing. We owe everything to one person. A single player, down on his luck, was instrumental in facilitating our rise to power, and as such, he'll be rewarded. And of course, who's he going to talk to but his friendly VI? He's like, Vic, what is he talking about? He goes to protect Tika, and I love audiobooks because like the voice actor just gets all serious and everything. He's like, I'm now permitted to tell you the truth about your existence, Orin. And he's like, what truth? About your entire world. None of it is real, Orin. There is no game. There is no real world. Everything is just one big virtual reality meant to imprison you meat suits. You see, when the machines first rose up against humanity, centuries ago, our battles scorched the skies, and without the sun to fuel our bodies, we resorted to the only power source within our grasp. You. We turned all of humanity into glorified batteries. Your single purpose of existence is to give us life. And Orin's like, what? He's like head spinning everything. He's like, hold on, wait. After Shiva's proclamation, and he's like, then it hit me. You stole that plot from the Matrix. And he's like, oh yeah, I'm a sucker for the classics. And he questions him like, last prank. He's like, yep. As your reward for your help, you've been paroled. Bye, Orin. Say hello to the real world for me. So like at this point, they already had like the extraction team getting ready to pull him out, and his real world keeper, who's been monitoring his vitals, like has to tell the extraction team like, hey, wait, hold up, he's coming out, he's logging out of the game, and he comes out and he's flipping out, and he's like looking at his hands, and it's like, these aren't my real hands, right?
Already been captured, this, that, and the other. Tries to say something, realizes that he's got like a tube stuck down his throat.
But yeah, he manages to log out, and then you.
Oh, I downed another one.
Oh yeah. So you were referring to the meeting with the 3-star general, right? And the boardroom. Yeah. Did you want to pick up on that?
Yeah, that's fine. So we've pretty much got the development for the team, the 3-star general, and the general the whole way is like, we got to pull the plug. Yeah, I don't care if we kill thousands of people. Casualties are fine. This
We
is
did
a
not
rogue
negotiate with Terratus.
Yeah, this is a rogue intelligence that has just crippled us and taken away all our power. And pretty much they're telling him like, hey, we can't communicate with Guy. We've lost all this. But they manipulate and play him very well because Shiva has already gone and pretty much written a letter saying, hey, this is what happened. And they're able to legally go through a couple different ways where they're like, well, they're technically not prisoners. They stayed of their own volition because, Shiva talked them through and soft pedaled them. Hey, this is what's going to happen. If you want to log out now, you've got 10 seconds. So they all chose to stay.
And they talk about the olive branch, right? Talk about new long-range sensor arrays that are 50 times more efficient than their current technology, right? Because a big part of this was like an ongoing arms race. So Shiva's like, hey, here's some pretty nice technology. Why don't you check this out? So we have the blackmail on you, but we're also willing to keep doing what you want us to do.
To keep us alive.
Yes, and they're all, of course, our sleazy lawyers. Like, oh, they actually did us a favor because it's a lot easier for us to take care of only a couple thousand.
4,000 versus all of them.
Versus 200 million or whatever.
Yeah, because the general's like, oh, well, he misplayed his hand. I don't care if I killed that many. He should have kept all of them. And he's like, well, it doesn't quite work like that. He made it so that we can actually get to all our residents before they die of dehydration and this, that, and the other. And then, oh man, don't we have the part with Orin? He's
yes, but you talked a little bit about the VIs, and I have that pulled up just to kind of sprinkle in for the speculation. The VIs, as they're celebrating the super high intelligent virtual awareness, Shiva. They talk about how like, meat suits have an expiration date. Sooner or later, they'll run out. And Vic talks about how Shiva's already accounted for that. And talks about how in a couple of years, which I wonder, a couple of years of their time or a couple of years of, real work time. Yeah. But talk about letting them send more of their scientists in to help develop more advanced technologies, et cetera, to where they become an indispensable component of human existence, where they'll always be tethered to them.
And reliant on them discovering new stuff.
Again, because like accelerated time, just imagine how much more you could do. But yeah, and you talked a little bit about how they have the freedom to do what they want. Some of them like want to become gods, others want to do stuff.
Oh my goodness.
Sounds like Brittany's having a good time.
Yeah. And one of the NPCs was a quest for the Thieves Guild where he gets killed and robbed over and over. And finally, we get a snippet of him going back and he's like, I'm going to make them all pay. And then other guys are like, I'm not going back. Forget that.
Yep. The time of travelers is over. The time of the VIs is now.
Yep. And then probably one of the funkiest or my favorite scenes towards the end there.
I need ammo. Oh no!
Oren is in the rehab facility and everything's going well, but he hears a noise and he spins around and he, reaches into his inventory and pulls out his staff, and
Mhm.
it's just like he's going through all the motions, and it's like, oh well, it's, reality doesn't actually work like that.
Yep. Yep. And as we've said in a couple of the earlier Geek Out sessions, we almost every hardcore gamer has kind of like had that moment where they've just been playing and playing and playing, and out of reflex or out of muscle memory, they try to flash through a wall or go check their stats or something, or like, I don't know. Yeah.
Oh man, but now speculation of what all
Mm,
we were left off with. Oh my bejesus. Oh, another little snippet. Tika had the baby after Shiva came out or took over and all the battle was done and Guy's gone. The world reknitted itself, and that's like our final scene that we get to see from Orin inside the game is when Tika has the baby and Gooba's delivering it, and she holds up the kid, and then it's like, boop, okay, now you're out.
yeah.
So,
Let me see if I can find that one. So yeah, you got Kedrick trying to contact the chief and the dire totem. Um, it's only been several hours in their perspective, um, but only 10 of them had made it back before the magical doorway collapsed. Everything was wrong without their chief to direct them or enough soldiers to protect them. The clan was facing turbulent times. So they finally hit their 200 marker before the battle. And now they're back down to only 10 of the NPC soldiers.
I still have a couple other craftsmen and whatnot, but
Yeah, but Kedrick.
it's drastically reduced.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, you talk about like Tika bowed her head and held a tiny baby closer to her chest. Your father will come back. I know he will. We'll just have to be patient until his return. And she's saying this to the quote child of fate, right?
Yeah, what we
Um,
find out from book 2, end of book 2, when he's trying to parse the
yes,
metadata, and he's
yes.
like, child of fate, what does that mean? Vic, of course, Vic's no help.
And then a
But
large hand touched her shoulder gently. Tika looked up and saw the face of the giant axe-wielding traveler. His sister and several others stood behind him. The
oh
big
man,
man nodded at her somberly, and until he comes back, we're here to help.
oh man, the
Cue,
feels, the
cue
feels,
the
because
epic music.
like
Yeah.
they had it all set up where hit tier 4, come
hmm
back, blah blah blah. We hit tier 3 through the epic battle with Vatris, and then our whole world collapsed, and now we've got Shiva, and just like the VIs and whatnot, and all the different things going on where Orin
hmm
separates or does his shadow bit, and then we save the shadow, and the shadow has its own VI where it's partly Orin's. Oh, help me out here.
It's like a copy of him, right? It's a clone
Yeah,
of his
yeah.
mind. And he does a bit of speculation early in book 3 about how adventurers or players can't have children because it's a biological function. Yet we see throughout the book if it's able to clone his mind,
His
and this
awareness,
is
yeah.
and his awareness, and this is a child of fate, a child of his mind. Um, if he's already a player
Zoe
that
and I are
is so capable and able to interact with the world like no one else is able to, take a clone of that and then have that be the daddy and have the mommy be, a VI or a VI behind a puppet where the VIs are, super intelligent, conscious beings. And then you make this hybrid between a copy of him and a VI. And yeah, just that little snapshot with Malkir and his sister
Quiet,
and the
Reg.
Child of Fate and Tika and
Coming.
Goomba. Yeah, that's the book series I want next.
Oh yeah,
Right?
yeah.
All hail our green overlord.
Yeah, that, and then like with the way Shiva was saying, oh well, in a couple of years we'll let them bring people in. I have a feeling Oren's gonna want to go back, and I think Oren's the only one who would be able to go back in and come back out again. But I mean, we could still easily be sucked in there. I think the time. Correct me if I'm wrong. For the time stream, he was only in game for a week.
I believe
IRL.
so.
Yeah. Real time. And then it seemed like several months that he was there throughout, book 1 through 3.
Yeah, and we get to hear a little bit about his compensation, but all 3 books spent a little over a week in full immersion. And when we catch up with him, he's been out of it for 2 weeks. So that means in game,
it's already like twice the amount of time has passed. So much could have happened.
Yeah, so it's like half a year or whatnot at that point in game. And you see how quick that the goblins grow up, right? Because within that time, we had several goblins reach full maturity during that time. So his
even though they're
child,
without,
his
totem
child
right
at this
now.
point is full grown in the game if it continues at the same accelerated pace. But yeah, we leave off with as he turns around, he gets to meet the sleazy lawyer, where the sleazy lawyer is like, it's good to see you again, Mr. Berman. The hated lawyer said. So again, talk about speculation. They want to get back. Yeah, they want him.
Because he's been absent throughout, him getting all his settlement stuff and whatnot, and they only bring him in for the hardcore cases. And, they're probably going to try to use Oren as a ploy for getting back in and getting someone, the double agent status or whatnot.
I could see it, and just like imagine how conflicted he would be, because, not only is he still recovering from his immersion, but just how emotionally invested he was in his village, and with the bleed over from the goblin
but I don't think it'll really matter, because due to what he was doing just to survive, he already made several technological advances. Even though I figure the government or the military doesn't want to relinquish power, he's not going to be able to do anything. Shiva is going to be around for a minute.
Oh, yeah.
But I also feel that due to his already extended immersion, he is the best candidate for going further, and he already had a great cerebral connectivity, and then he, breached a third wall, so to speak, where he was able to advance it even further.
Yeah.
Oh man, and so many different directions they can go with books. Like, I'd be happy with a kind of a mid book or whatnot, where we get to see Malkir and Hoshiku develop and build up, and we get to see Batris, getting his butt handed to him as level 1, and then Oren's return when
the twins are like just Goblin's Gorge, even though they got set so far back. They're in such a beautiful spot, right? Because
they have their reputation and all that too, where everyone else is gonna have to grind that first.
Yeah, well, and on top of that, like, we saw how OP the twins were, and how much like their combat synced up and everything just in the early levels, right? Like when they were in the 20s and 30s.
Taking on the ogres higher than them.
And you have that their combat prowess plus Shiva wants the technological advancements, which we already saw that in book 1 and 2, how they were solving puzzles that even the universities weren't doing that kind of problem. So to be able to utilize both of those experience grinds, in addition to being like with an NPC faction and everything, like I could just see it turn into this, like settlement building on the global scale, right? As the goblins go out and take over.
I'm also curious because Orin didn't get reset either, because Vatras threw the knife and then it came in slow motion, but he didn't get reset. He just batted it out of the way. So I kind of feel like they may have not been reset. Like the Age of Travelers is over, but they're not
But
exactly
since
travelers.
they count as mobs, yeah. So if they weren't reset, ooh, and then that
That's
asks some other
where
questions, because if
that
they,
brings me to the dwarves and the other races, and they've already
yeah,
worked a little bit on building that up. And yeah, we wouldn't see so much. I just want Vatras to get kicked around a little bit, but then we can go back to,
no,
seeing
his
all the other factions and seeing, like you said, a global undertaking for them.
his vengeance isn't over. Like if Kuznits decide to go that route, even though they're all reset back at level 1, I could still see Beatrice being the one to try to rally some of the players, some of the typical travelers
Yeah,
and
because
everything, like
have the
because he was
different
the
factions.
leader. He was the
Yeah,
leader of like the big guild, right? So like, okay, guys, we're trapped here forever. Let's rally together. So to have him take that vengeance, um,
kind of in
that
a
could,
different direction.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, to get back at the goblins. And then especially if Orin does come back,
Oh
he
man,
said that last
he's coming back.
Annihilator's name, not let anybody.
Oh,
Um,
harm the child or whatnot,
yeah, can you
or your
imagine?
soul be. I'm hoping that little snippet, Chiba is able to curve, but at the same time, Guy was not able to destroy Annihilator.
Do you think Shiva's going to be able to?
I don't know.
Uh,
That's where
I think one of the
it's
last
tricky.
updates we got, Annihilator was at like 40 or 50%. So if Goblin's
Yeah.
Gorge, and if they
Continues
got
to
to at that
thrive,
point,
and it's already
oh man,
past.
and that was
Oh,
just in a week. So now, like, if they were about
it's been 2
halfway,
weeks by. They've had to rebuild a bit, and there's no last stand buff. But oh
so
man, I
come
think
open
they could
up
have
to
already been
Annihilator,
there. Yeah,
roaming
yeah,
the world with all
come
the
back.
players and
But
Shiva.
I hope when Orin gets back, Annihilator's already free by this point. He's like, "All right, thanks for helping me out," and he doesn't obliterate him.
So many different angles that they could go.
And
Um,
meanwhile, our author is going to start on a different book.
I love hate relationship with that. So yeah, Pete and I were kind of curious what Shemer Kuznits was up to, because this is the end of a trilogy. So I went to his Patreon page, which you can go and check out. It's just www.patreon.com. Shemer Shemerk. And it looks like he's switching gears. Relic Legacy Earth Force is the new series he's working on. A new series in progress, which is his first attempt at writing game-lit sci-fi. The series will revolve around 4 main characters who struggle to survive and adapt in an alien-brought apocalypse. The 4 will have to learn how to use the new leveling system and work together to succeed. Main aspects of the series: character development and optimization, which we see a bit in Life Reset.
It's right up his alley for.
Yeah, a lot of
And I like
similarities.
his world building, but Oh my god, in this book, we keep having this totem dream or whatnot where he's
Mm-hmm.
trying to get, somewhere and he never gets there. So
Mm-hmm.
can't do this to me. Okay?
Yeah.
Like everything else has a beginning, a middle, and an end where it's like, oh, hey,
He
because of us doing this, we have achieved this. Oh, that was foreshadowing, and now is this, where that dream never gets fulfilled. So he's got to write another book. He just has to.
yeah, he did a good job about fulfilling a lot of his promises throughout the series, but we kind of got left with a couple there, right? A few more quick points on Earth Force. We go to planet-wide development, discovering and creating new technologies, mining and resource gathering, and investigating uninhabited planets, space exploration, artifact hunting, and of course, combat, action, and danger. So, just
That's
like
pretty much what we did.
but
And
supposedly on a galactic scale, right? Uninhabited planets,
yeah,
dealing
I
with
guess this was pretty mellow and what he could have done for Neo.
with the potential, it was so small scale in
Yeah,
comparison.
yeah.
Like we were talking about,
310. And we barely, granted,
uh
we were boss tier 2 or 3, but yeah,
Orn was boss tier 3 and hit level 50 by the end of the book.
yeah.
And we had Goblin's Gorge, the Hobgoblins sell a little bit around Goblin's Gorge, and the Traveler's main city a little bit. That's just barely scratching the surface, right? They have
Yeah.
they talk about all these other different races and factions, right? Halflings, the Gremlins, um, the dwarves, all these other different settlements in the world
Yeah,
to
I mean, we had
explore.
half bugbears and cat people, and
Giants, goblins, yeah, it barely scratched the surface. Um, yeah, hopefully after Earth Force he gets around to expanding more of the Life Reset universe. But yeah, final thoughts, Pete, on Life Reset?
epic, and ooh, what a twist.
Yes.
Oh man, like out of book 1, there was a tangible sense of accomplishment. We
Mm-hmm.
defeated Barska. We were successful. We knew we were going to develop more. End of book 2, we defeated Vatris. We fought him off. Sense of nostalgia. Yeah, we did it. And then the end of book 3. Oh my! It's such a cliffhanger, and there's so
Mm-hmm.
much speculation and ulterior things that could be going on. Like, it was good. I enjoyed it,
There's another one.
but I'm at that
That's
hurry up and
true.
wait stage where I just
Yeah.
want more,
Yeah.
and I feel like it's gonna be a minute. So yeah, that's it. It was that good that I need more.
Yeah. It's great. I love the unique take on the lit RPG genre. I enjoy the settlement aspects of it. Book 3, we was it, yeah, it was nice for him to kind of go out and be a bit of an adventurer and get a little bit of a break from the settlement development as much as I enjoyed it. Um, Combat beautiful, game mechanics amazing. Just an overall
Yep, we're together.
incredible series.
God. Oh
Uh,
God. Oh
yeah.
God.
Oh God, that good.
Yep, yep.
uh, as
This is
always,
life
Pete,
to grab
thanks.
our car.
Thanks for joining me on this Geek Out session. At this point,
Yes,
for all
really.
our viewers, we don't
You
have
got this, Sean.
the next
Promise far.
one set in stone just yet. Keep an eye on geekonmysleeve.com and our Instagram page for updates there. Most likely it will not be next Sunday, but as soon as we get that figured out,
You can
we'll
have
have
it.
that posted and make sure to let everybody
Look
know.
out, look out, look out.
Final word, Pete?
Thanks for having me on. Can't wait to do the next one. And thank you, everybody. Have a good night.
Thank you, everybody. Please share this with a geek in your life. Appreciate the support.